Welcome to the SEI podcast series. My name is Matthew Butkovic. I'm the Technical Director for Cyber Risk and Resilience here at the Institute. In 2025, the Stanford Artificial Intelligence Index report found that AI is embedded in everyday life in new ways, things we didn't even imagine 5 years ago. They also found that AI is becoming more efficient, affordable, and accessible. As an offset, in 2025, the Gartner hype cycle placed generative AI in the trough of disillusionment, the phase of development where we start to see some of the core limitations of a technology. Soon after that, an MIT report found that despite investments of $30 to $40 billion into generative AI, 95% of organizations utilizing generative AI said they realized zero return on that investment. So that's really the scene setter for today's conversation. It's my great honor to introduce my friend and colleague, Dr. Ipek Ozkaya. He's the technical director for the SEI's AI native software engineering work and has led the SEI's work on the AI maturity model. I've had the pleasure of working with Ipek on this effort. Today we're going to explore how a capability maturity model can help you organize your thinking, your planning, and your execution around all things AI. So welcome, Ipek.
Hello. Well, happy to be here and very happy to be talking about the work that we've been doing.
Wonderful. So we like to start with a little background. Would you maybe give us just a brief summary of your path to the SEI and the work that you're doing for us?
Absolutely. So as you said, I lead the body of work in AI native software engineering at the SEI, and that includes two focus areas. One, using AI for software engineering dominantly, especially for large-scale systems. What does that mean as related to software architecture, modernization, and evolving the systems as the needs evolve. And another focus area is looking into especially the tactical edge, which is an important area for our stakeholders, and what does it mean to incorporate our AI products. So how I got here is, in fact, very interesting because I did my PhD at Carnegie Mellon University, and now reflecting back, I care to admit at the dark ages of AI, which was referred to, where, yes, there were a lot of who talk about different aspects of AI, but that was not necessarily mainstream. And my PhD was in computational design, using some of the AI algorithms for different aspects of the design process.
Well, thank you for explaining your path here. So I've referred to the silver thread of cyber in the past, and I think now I can refer to the golden thread of AI, where it's going to be a feature in just about everything we touch that's digital, and most of us spent most of our day touching things that are digital very often. The stats that I provided, we see that there's this misalignment in expectation versus return. Now, one way to look at that is it's early days in all of this, right? The staggering figure of $30 to $40 billion being invested in AI for essentially no demonstrable return in some cases. Let's talk about that disconnect between AI, our aspirations, and the current reality.
Absolutely. I mean, you said it well. It's not going to be. I think it's already every aspect of everything we do. And I think a lot of people, for anything they do, they're recognizing all of a sudden there's an AI feature in the software products they use, into day-to-day interactions that they have anywhere in the digital work. There's a plus and a minus of this. First of all, the plus is, well, it's supposed to make things easier. That's the plus. But the minus is we don't really know whether it's really helping or not. And I think some of the disconnect that we're observing is the fear of missing out. A lot of organizations, even individuals, they feel that they are missing out if they don't become competent in AI. The organizations feel missing out if they are not necessarily thinking about incorporating AI. So that's probably one aspect of it. The other aspect of it, there are actually some areas where it's really helpful. There's actually value to be gained for it. However, that really requires organizations to look into it carefully from the perspective of, why do I need AI? What problem am I solving, and how I'm improving? I mean, there's nothing magical about this. Like, this is transformation, digital transformation 101. What is different in the AI is the pace and the magnitude it's come at people. And you and I have been talking about this for a while now. Where do I start from my journey in terms of why do I need AI? How do I bring the AI, and what does adoption really mean for my context is, I think, where it's important. And the disconnect is, I think, a lot of people unfortunately have not had the luxury to put the time and thinking behind it, and that's where we see a lot of the disconnect.
Yeah, I think it's a really excellent premise, right? That there's a lot of fear of missing out, which is driving the implementation of things that maybe aren't as well reasoned as we'd want. I was thinking, preparing for today's discussion, are there parallels in the rise of software broadly? So I'd like your thoughts on that. So when organizations went from manual ways of working to digital ways of working, starting in the 1960s through today, right? It seems to me we would probably find similar facts and statistics that said there was a misalignment initially that led to the generation of benefit didn't match the expectation, I guess is the best way to put it.
That's very true. And what that boils down to is, in a way, understanding and codifying practice. Like what made maturity models what they were at the time when they were created, and you and I are fortunate enough to sit in the organization that were actually at the leading front end of that innovation and maturation of the practice is codification of practice. At the early days, why software was confusing, why a lot of organizations were struggling with it, because there weren't codified practices. There weren't repeatable practices. There weren't consistency. We're exactly seeing the same. Yes, there's a lot of AI. What even AI means differ for a lot of organizations. You and I have been talking to a lot of individuals and we've observed it. And that codification of practice is evolving while the technology is evolving. I think that's probably maybe a little bit more challenging than the software days. That was mostly about process and practice, although automation was part of it eventually. But here we have the automation, we have the AI models, we have software, we have cybersecurity. Oh, by the way, everything is evolving, and there are so many tool vendors. There's industry pushing tools at us. There's industry pushing good and bad models at us. So that complexity creates the challenge. But then stepping back and codifying practice is really where we come in with this work. And I think that's why you and I are excited about it.
Oh, absolutely. And we're really building on a long lineage here at the SCI. So you mentioned in software and software engineering, codifying practices allows for more predictable outcomes. We applied the same thinking in cybersecurity when it came to the operational resilience of an organization and looking at the underlying practices. When I think about that, I think that the cyber example of how fluid the environment can be is a good parallel for AI, where the nature of the threat actor in cyber is highly fluid. And it seems to me that roughly the same thing's happening where we're handed a new set of very key inputs related to AI, and then we must respond to it and determine if those fundamental measures of process and practice implementation still matter.
Absolutely. And of course, we're seeing cyber and AI interact because there are no new cyber threats, new threats within AI that is actually coming in. We also see similarly how software and AI interact, because if you don't have good software baseline practices, forget about bringing AI, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of foundation that we build on, and that's actually very exciting to see, because we see a lot of these as we're going through some of the discussions in our team. As you know, like if you don't have the software or cybersecurity practice, and if you're throwing AI into it, well, no wonder you're going to have challenges. And where do you focus on? It does not necessarily even start with AI there. It starts from some of the more foundational practices. But if you have those foundational practices, then how you introduce AI is not, again, like a straightforward recipe if you don't have the codification and the right practices. Like we have human-in-the-loop automation, like workflow re-engineering. There are different capabilities that you really need to focus on when you're thinking about AI. Generative AI brings a different set of data concerns compared to bread and butter machine learning, compared to developing the systems with agentic approach. So those are the variations that become important to tease apart when you're thinking about maturity of AI and AI adoption.
Yeah, I want to talk about maturity for certainly let's talk a great deal about maturity, but this aspect of it. So I don't think it can be overstated, especially for folks that are watching this looking for guidance. The implementation of AI doesn't obviate the need to do all those foundational practices in software engineering and in cyber. And to your point, if you don't have those things well sorted and you stack this on top, you may find yourself in a very difficult situation.
Absolutely. And in fact, to reflect on some of our early findings, we are some of the organizations that we're applying our approaches with, some of them say, well, nothing changed with AI. We already had bread and butter data practices. On one hand, at first it's like, oh, that's great. But then, no, things should change with AI. Let's focus on what are those things that change in AI. Or others say, well, we reinvented everything with AI. That's not also the right answer. So there's that Goldilocks zone that the practices really bring to bear, which is actually pretty, of course, we're excited about seeing these empirical data come into place. It's good to see that the codification, in a way, helps both extremes and bring them to a point where they could talk about consistently about the practices and what it means.
Yeah. And I think one of the most rewarding aspects of us collaborating on this AI adoption maturity model is that we can draw in this interdisciplinary way. So folks that have deep expertise in AI engineering, software engineering, and cyber coming together to build this amalgam that we need. So let's talk a little about the model itself and the pieces, parts of the model.
Absolutely. So the model was developed. Accenture knocked on the door, and they also themselves had recognized this need because they obviously serve a very big global footprint and a lot of different business sectors. And because we had our experience back in different kinds of maturity models, as you talked about, whether there was an opportunity to collaborate. And because we were very excited about the opportunity to look into the codification of practice, we started this endeavor. One of the very first things we did, if you recall, is that well, there's a lot of talk out there. Is there something we can build on? Right? We did our homework. There are a number of maturity models that were actually put out, especially when the first AI excitement hit with machine learning models becoming a lot more dominant, responsible AI concentrations hitting in. And those models are actually serve a good purpose as well. And there are a lot of good work in the research space that talk about maturity, digital transformation, adoption as well. So we looked into some of those already existing models and practices that were put out there. We talked to quite a lot of organizations and executives in terms of where their challenges are, what are their adoption roadblocks, and where they're seeing some of those challenges. We put out a broad industry survey to collect the same information from that, and we actually collected quite a lot of interesting data. And then, of course, across ASEI, as you said, from a cyber AI engineering and software engineering perspective, we are working with our own customers, especially in the government space, and seeing their own challenges. So all of that data in an empirical basis provided the input in terms of what are the dimensions and what are the capability areas that need to be essential in that. So we have 8 dimensions across organizational change and lifecycle engineering, and we'll link into the report. I'm not going to belabor them one by one here, but the focus of those were, there are some of them are fundamental, like you need to talk about and think about AI strategy. You need to think about organizational change, organizational structure, and workforce and culture and skilling. Those are bread and butter. But how are you doing it in a repeatable way and how you're adjusting to the changes is important. So that's that body of focus. But there are a couple of things that I want to pull out for the listeners here. It's not just going through a set of good questions to ask. It's about the practices. And what AI, especially generative AI, brings to bear, and with agentic developments upon us, is how am I rethinking my workflows differently with AI? How am I rethinking some of the tasks that I already do with AI, and what does that mean? A lot of organizations categorize it in 3 buckets, which is assist, augment, and autonomous. So with assist, you're just improving maybe simple aspects of it. With augment, you're doing a little bit more with human in the loop aspects of it. But with autonomous, you're really putting the responsibilities in different ones. So the model takes into account that progression in workflow reengineering and all the data, as well as different capability areas that need to bear to be able to make that progression. Not all organizations, not all business domains are going to want to do all or one. But it's really how do you go about thinking through where you're bringing AI, what kind of AI you're bringing into, and are you putting policies, practices, risk management aspects, roles and responsibilities, as well as the engineering focus into it. What has happened that we've seen, and I think some of the findings of the MIT report reflect to it, a lot of organizations threw infrastructure to the problem. There's AI out there. I need to have the generative AI models. I need to be able to spend the tokens, CPU, and all of that. Let me throw infrastructure to the problem. That's where we're seeing the ROI mismatch. This is not just an infrastructure problem. Is it where am I going to take advantage of a problem? So they need to really understand whether it's AI fit, and it's perfectly fine to say this is not an AI problem. I think that's where we're seeing most of the problem. A lot of use cases are not AI fit. You don't have to use generative AI for every single task. And sometimes bread and butter deterministic automation is much better. It's really that partnership. It's not just human and AI partnership. It's human, existing tools, and AI partnership. And that's where the model is intended to help organizations to decipher. And that's where we're putting the focus on. So it's not just AI for the sake of AI. In fact, and stop me if I can go on and on, but
please.
I'll do one more. Measurement and analysis, like ROI comes back to measurement. So a lot of the organizations that we talk to, we're finding their adoption measurement is how many more people are using these tools. Well, that's great, but why is that the goal? Is it not just more use? Is it effective use, fit for purpose use, and of course responsible use and risk averse use, making sure that you're not introducing risks. So there are all these little funny adoption steps I think we're going through, and the model is intended to, the dimensions and the capability areas are intended to put all of those in a repeatable way in practice in front of the organization so they could gauge their existing practices and course correct accordingly, or just confirm that they have it properly aligned.
Yeah, so there's many things there I think are worth exploring. So fit for purpose is the first in my mind. So I'm proud of our work here in that it is fit for purpose across the board. So I think about the models and frameworks we've created at the SEI. They're typically not for a single stakeholder. It's kind of first element. Yep. The others, you can use them in a very modular way, and we've taken that design element and brought it to this use case as well. I think about the workflow or work process component to this, and it sounds a great deal like the conversations I was having in the early 2000s in manufacturing, where if you brought in a new enterprise resource planning system, if you still have the same processes involved in procurement and managing raw materials, making the product and shipping it, well, you're really finding efficiencies. So I believe there's going to be a phase where the workflow analysis and reengineering will catch up with the tech, and I think our work will be one of the important voices, one of the important set of milestones, goalposts, and guidance that folks will draw on.
Absolutely, and also, that's a very good point that you brought up. Because practice evolves very quickly in this space, some of the bread and butter practices will not change, but others will. So our goal in creating the model was to be evolvable and to be customizable to different scenarios, as well as practice evolves, are we able to add new practices without overwhelming? Because the goal is not to go through every single little detail, to really strike the important ones, because then the rest of the essential things you do fall in place naturally, especially if you're already paying attention to software and cyber security practices. Because without those, like, adopting AI does not necessarily scale no matter what you do.
Right. So these sort of model implementations of all types can collapse under their own weight if you're not careful. Yep. So being selective and saying this is what matters, and it's tied to an outcome, in my opinion, is, and I know you share this opinion, is really important.
Yep. And
also tying it to specific measures of success.
Absolutely.
And ROI. I was thinking, Ipek, about the description of AI native software and how a model like this fits. So maybe for our listeners, just explain the difference between, let's call it traditional software development and AI native software development.
So today, and thanks a lot for that question, today software engineering as a discipline is going through a very exciting period. It's a very exciting time to be a software engineer. It's also a scary time to be a software engineer. Today, any tool that you open comes with some AI functionality. This wasn't the case 6 months ago. So, and because 6 months ago or maybe 8 months ago, I might be getting the timelines, but definitely not multiple years, we were talking about how to use generative AI, and was it ChatGPT, the Llama models, and all of that. Today, they're already within the development environments. IDEs already have AI. A lot of the big foundational model developers, OpenAIs and the clouds and the Gemini, like the Googles and all of that, they are already providing these tools and environments, powerful development environments for software engineers. That is exciting. And that is the reality a graduate, a student in any software engineering, computer science program today comes into. So we cannot not embrace that reality. So AI native software engineering embraces that reality. That's step one. Step two, Well, embracing that reality means maybe also stepping back and questioning, how will the workflows shift? Are the artifacts going to be the same artifacts? Are we going to be able to collapse some of the artifacts because we're able to do more? What does it mean to really take advantage of AI for more complex problems? Well, you and I live in the very multi-decade-long, multi-million lines of code software space. What does it mean to modernize those a little bit better, faster maybe, and cheaper with the use of these tools? So those are the hard questions that we're asking in the AI-native software engineering. But also we're creating AI-enabled systems with AI-native approaches. So the risks, to speak to some of the work that you're doing, cybersecurity risks that are potential in that environment is a whole new ballgame. So you need to be cognizant of those, provide the responsible approaches and practices, and provide some of the automation as well as guidance to the end users.
That's really great. And certainly in the cyberspace, right? AI for offense, AI for defense. It's going to shape both parts of that equation. I was thinking about the description you were offering about software engineering being altered by AI. And I thought about this earlier. It's a little like saying that you are an electric native carpenter in the 1920s when electric saws became commonplace. Now we just call it carpentry.
Yep.
And I think that maybe in 5-10 years,
absolutely,
it will be so intermeshed, so part of the DNA of software development that you won't be able to pull it apart.
You won't be able to pull it apart. You won't need to pull it apart because we'll have worked through some of the risks, trust, or guardrails and everything that comes along with it, and it'll be part of software engineering, and it will maybe provide some of the different positions of entry to the discipline as well. And I think you're right. We won't necessarily need to qualify the AI aspect. That is very true. But for the Software Engineering Institute, it also highlights the kind of research and kind of innovations that we're looking into. But absolutely right. This is like a fast evolution of the technology space, and we'll see how that will evolve in time, which is a lot shorter than it used to be.
Yeah, the cycles are much shorter.
Yes.
So Ipek, you work on many things around here, and we're keeping you plenty busy. The place is keeping many of us busy on this project, but are there other related projects or other things you'd like to highlight?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So not just me, but my team. You mentioned the AI native software engineering. We have a big focus on software modernization, especially providing smart automation for software modernization, AI-driven and other automation for refactoring, evolving system code translation. We have quite a number of very exciting projects in that space. We also are developing some of the approaches for incorporating AI into the mission-based software, and testing is a big problem there. So what does it mean to test an ML model, AI model, versus to test a system that includes that model? Those are in the first, they're easy problems, but they're not necessarily, because we do tend to focus on the component for getting the end-to-end system. So we have some projects that are focused on providing some techniques, but not just techniques, but how can we influence the government with guidelines so that they provide the guidelines and the policy that incorporate some of that thinking into it. So yes, we're pretty busy. And of course, my favorite, I've done some work in managing technical debt and technical debt. AI is bringing all of that conversation back into the hard front. Can AI help solve technical debt? Is AI creating technical debt? I get knocked on the door quite a bit for that as well.
I'm certain.
So it's been a very exciting time for our team and myself.
So can we have you back for other podcasts on those topics?
Absolutely. As long as you're interviewing me, sure.
Excellent. Well, Ipek, I'm proud to call you a colleague and a friend. And certainly, I feel like we have this opportunity right now to work on something foundational in a field that might be the most transformative something we see in our careers.
It is true. And in fact, to that point, Matt, one of the things that has been incredibly exciting and humbling in this project is the collaborative environment, how difficult the problem is, and how industry, government, and organizations like ourselves are willing to work together in a collaborative way. The fact that an organization like Accenture would come to us, the fact that a lot of the organizations are helping shape some of the conversation and contributing their time is actually quite exciting, and you and I get to see that and write the right. So that's also very, very fulfilling and exciting for both us, but also for the community to be able to look into some of the output that will come.
Ipek, thank you so much for sitting down with me to discuss the AI adoption maturity model. For our audience, we will include links in the transcript of the resources mentioned during this podcast, including the blog post on this topic. Finally, remind our audience that our podcasts are available on SoundCloud, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, and on the SEI's own YouTube channel. If you like what you saw and heard today, please give us a thumbs up. Thank you for joining us.